Axel Rudakubana, the Southport monster. Now I'm doing an updated video on this piece of vermin because a lot of my subscribers have been asking, more so since the attack on the prison officers when he was placed on the basic regime, which I will let you know in more detail exactly how that regime works. Now, like I say, he's in HMP BELMARSH in the segregation unit, kept away from all the other prisoners. He was only having contact with the screws in that segregation unit, and he is obviously protected at the highest level from these screws, the same ones that he attacked. Now, the updated version that I have got at the moment, because I've been getting few bits of information through, is that his basic regime is now actually up and he's back on standard. So basic is when you lost all your privileges. It stands for incentives. It's IEP, incentives and earn privileges. So you get the basic, standard and enhanced. When this little piece of vermin, which I'll describe him as, was put on the basic regime for throwing boiling water over the officers, it was nearly 8 weeks ago now, and he has been on the basic regime. He has now come off the basic regime. So when you're on basic, because it was in the papers about him still getting luxuries from the prison, i.e. Mars bars, Maltesers, these are the articles that are described in the press, bits of chocolate and novelties like this, when everyone who hasn't been a prisoner doesn't know anything about it, says, why does the prison give him these type of privileges or incentives and luxuries? But I'll tell you exactly, because on the basic regime, you still get £2.50 a week. Every prisoner gets £2.50 a week unemployment pay. If you're in prison and you haven't got a job and you're not getting any money from any other sources inside the prison, you automatically get £2.50 a week. But out of your £2.50 a week, if you do have a TV, obviously if you're on the basic regime, you don't have a TV, you've got to pay £1 towards having a TV. Believe it or not, people think you watch TV for free in prison, but you've got to pay £1 a week. Or if you're in a double pad and you're sharing a pad with someone, it's 50 pence each. So you've got your £2.50 a week. Then on the basic regime, if you have funds coming from the outside, which he will have from his dad and probably the government, because they'll be funding them, funding the family for protection by keeping them in protection and giving them plenty of welfare. So his dad will be sending him money in, so then he's allowed an additional £5 to spend on canteen. So £7.50 a week, which he'll be able to buy anything he wants from the prison commissary or the prison canteen. You get a canteen sheet if you're on basic, or you go and do it on the kiosk, but obviously with him being on basic and the way he's kept inside the segregation unit, he would have had a bit of paper put under his door. This is the old style canteen, how they used to do it. On the canteen sheet, it's got however many hundreds of items on there, and he can add up to £7.50 and spend it on anything he wants. Like it said, Mars bars, Maltesers, luxuries like this. So he can sit in that basic pad with nothing, but he'll still have that £7.50 to spend on anything he wants. But when you're on standard, which I believe he has been put back onto now, you can then spend, it depends on the prisons as well. The governors lay out the rules for this, but it's normally around about £15 for a standard prisoner. If you're enhanced, which is the highest level of prisoner for good behaviour, you can spend between £30 and £50 a week out of your private cash. But then you have your pay on top of it for either unemployment pay, or obviously the most enhanced prisoners all work. That's how they get that status. So enhanced prisoners have £30 to £50. Then you have your wages on top, which typically, depending on the prisoners, around about £15. So he is now back on the standard regime. So he'll now have around about £15 out of his private cash, plus the money from the prison unemployment pay. So he'll be spending about £17.50 a week on whatever he wants inside of Belmarsh prison. So what is happening with him at the moment? Now, when he committed these horrendous murders in Southport in June of last year, he was given life with a minimum term of 52 years. But believe you me, that 52 years will be for the rest of his life. He will never be released from prison. And again, what is quite challenging for the prison, with him being a Belmarsh Category A high security unit and being a teenager, it's more challenging because typically it's for over 21s. And this is the reason why he's not going to any of the high security prison, because Belmarsh is designed for high profile prisoners like himself, and they can cater and cope with teenagers. So that's the reason why he's kept in there. He'll be turning 19 this year. Then he'll have another 2 years before he's moved on to the high security prisons. Then he will be getting passed around all of the prisons, because that's what happens with the high profile inmates. He will be kept segregated from the rest of the prisoners. But there will be points throughout his sentence where he will be attacked. So people watching this thinking he's going to be protected forever, he will be attacked severely as well at some point in his sentence, and it will be on the VP wings, the vulnerable prisoner wing, the bacon wings, the beastie wings. This is where this horrible piece of vermin will be going, on the VP wings to get protected. But like I say, just because he's protected and people think, why hasn't he been got at the moment? It's because he's in Belmarsh segregation unit. And he's under the highest protection, shall we say. Obviously, he has had a beating off the screws, because I have heard as well, when I got information about what happened when he threw boiling water on the screws. He's no longer got the kettle inside of his pad. And he's no longer allowed a flask with hot water in. Obviously, this is on his record. So they're not going to take that chance again, which they shouldn't do. He shouldn't be allowed those type of facilities so he can harm the prisoners, which he'll not come into contact with, or the officers, who are the only ones that are keeping him safe, and he's literally threw it back in the face. Excuse the pun, because he did chuck the water in the officer's face, but literally he's threw it back in their faces when they're the ones that are looking after him, even though they don't want to, but it's their duty of care. Obviously, they're a prison officer, and that's what they've got to do. But now that he done that, they made it a little bit easier, because now he can't complain when they're not interacting with him and not speaking with him or playing games of pool with him, because that's what happens as well when you're on that type of supervision and you're down there for your own protection. The screws have got to interact with them. But when he done that offence of chucking the hot water on the screws, the bell was pressed, the alarm was raised, and all the block screws piled in, wrapped him up, and give him a good old beating, just what he deserved. But I will go into a little bit about the block screws as well. Generally, the block screws are the biggest, nastiest screws in the system, for obvious reasons. They've got to wrap people up, they've got to cater or look after the most dangerous inmates, the ones that have attacked other prisoners, and the ones that have attacked the prison officers. They've been wrapped up and put down the block. These screws are trained to wrap people up, and they're also trained, when they wrap people up, to give them the biggest beating of their life, but to leave the most minimal or visual looking. So when you get wrapped up off the screws, they bend your arms up behind your back, snap your wrists, snap your shoulders, the knee the fuck out of your side, so the knee in your ribs, the knee in your legs, so you've got dead legs, you've got broken ribs, and it's not visible if you're looking at someone. When he's put up in front of the governor, because obviously on these sort of regimes, they've got to sit in front of the governor, or the governor will come to the cell and chat with them. And there's not going to be very many visual marks, so when he's complaining, the governor will just chuck it back at him and say, well, you look okay to me. But really, he's wincing in agony because his ribs are done in and his legs are done in. So hopefully, he's had to sit in pain with broken ribs and whatever for a number of weeks when he'd done the attack, because it's exactly what he deserves. But that would have been a little bit of payback for the screws, obviously what he's done to them. And imagine they having to work with him. They'll have been happy that they're finally getting the moment to give him a justified beating. But like I say, when he gets 21-year-old, he will be passed around the high security estate, probably on the units more than likely for a number of years. But then he will be put on protection, and he'll probably end up in Franklin on A wing, which wing caters for the worst of the worst. Now, a few inmates that are on there is the likes of Ian Huntley, Levi Belfield, Wayne Cousins, David Fuller, the morgue monster, the grinder killer, can't remember his name, I've done a video on him previously. All of these beasties, the worst of the worst, are kept together on that wing inside of Franklin, which has become known in the local papers as Monster Mansion. And yes, before you jump on in the comments, Wakefield was the original Monster Mansion, which still is, because it's the biggest bacon prison in the UK. But Franklin Prison has got 4 beastie wings, which hold a considerable amount of them. So there is hundreds and hundreds of beasties who are the worst of the worst inside of there. But the high profile ones are all on A wing, where this beast will end up. But all of those ones that I've just mentioned have all been attacked as well. Ian Huntley nearly lost his life when he got a big slicing down there. But unfortunately, he survived that. But although we say unfortunately, fortunately, he survived it to get another one somewhere else down the line, because that's what happens to these type of inmates. And I will be keeping you updated on what happens and what's exactly happening, because you find it interesting. And like I've said, we're having such a big channel now, people are getting in touch on a daily basis, and there is people on the inside giving us info on what's happening with these type of prisoners. So I'll leave that one there for now, people. I thought I would just give you an update on that. Hopefully you're enjoying it, and if you are, remember to comment, like, subscribe. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day.